It's Kate.
And Oliver Hudson. Host of the new podcast, Sibling Revelry. That's right.
We started this show because, you know what? No one talks about siblings and that dynamic.
The siblings, they know each other better than anybody.
Yes.
You know.
Listen to Sibling Revelry on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hi, I'm Frances Fry.
And I'm Ann Morris.
And we are the hosts of a new TED podcast called Fixable.
We've helped leaders at some of the world's most competitive companies solve all kinds of problems.
On our show, we'll pull back the curtain and give you the type of honest, unfiltered advice we usually reserve for top executives. Give us a call and we'll help you solve the problems you're stuck on. Listen to Fixable on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Episode 303, 5th Anniversary Special, Secrets Behind a Personal Finance Podcast.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast, where you'll learn to save money, embrace simplicity, and live a richer life. Here are your hosts, Jen and Jill.
Pew, 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 pew. Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast. My name is Jen.
My name is Jill.
And we are saying that for the 303rd time over
I'm sure we've said it more than that, too.
Right?
Think about all the episodes we had to re-record.
Ooh, yeah. 5 years.
5 years.
Of recording.
That's longer than most marriages.
Yikes.
And I think I said that at like our 2-year.
Yes. This is the longest relationship I have been in other than
my husband.
My husband, yeah. So, and I'm pleased with it.
Me
I'm pleased
too.
With it.
5 years.
Yes.
Oh, I'm gonna you keep going.
Okay.
I'm gonna look up what people do for their 5-year anniversary.
Perfect. So today we are going to share some secrets behind our personal finance podcast. We asked you on Instagram to share some personal questions you had about us, some questions about the podcast. And so we're going to answer those, but we're not just going to, be self-absorbed and talk all about ourselves. We also are going to relate it back to you, your finances, and how you can benefit from 5 years of Frugal Friends.
Our wooden anniversary.
A wooden anniversary.
And wooden because it's so strong.
Mm-hmm.
Houses are built out of to withstand not termites, but the rest of the elements.
You can only break it if you are trained in some kind of martial art.
Or that. Or you're a termite.
But first, this episode is brought to you by the shows who helped us get here. Success does not happen in a vacuum, and to record over 300 episodes, it takes a village of mentorship, support, and love. One of those early shows was Optimal Finance Daily. If you like audiobooks, then you'll love Optimal Finance Daily. They narrate personal finance articles every day of the week so that you don't have to find all the blogs and read them yourself. So there's stuff on investing, saving, earning. Definitely subscribed. But the original podcast, Optimal Living Daily, there's a lot of different ones like health, finance, more than that. But Optimal Living Daily was one of the first to recognize my writing. They read one of my articles on their podcast. And so they have more like minimalism and literally everything like optimal living on that one. And you should definitely check them out. Oldpodcast.com. Get it? Optimal Living Daily, OLD podcast.com.
Wow.
And so the first thank you of this episode goes out to Optimal Living Daily, Optimal Finance Daily. So thank you, Justin and Lee, for believing in me before Frugal Friends was a twinkle in our eyes.
Wasn't even a thought in our bellies.
No. Or in our brains.
Right. my thoughts are guttural.
Yes.
They come
I believe
deep,
that.
deep
I
from
believe
the core.
That. So if you want to check out our other anniversary specials, we don't do one every year, but we did do one last year, episode 207, What We've Learned in 4 Years of Frugal Friends. And then you guys ask us all the time for like a husband's episode. We actually did that episode 104. It was our 2-year anniversary special where we brought Eric and Travis on and we did a show, all 4 of us together.
Yes.
And that was interesting. Maybe we'll have to bring that back for our 6th.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
And it is on YouTube too. We video
on YouTube,
recorded it as well. If you want to see what our hot man pieces look like.
Amen. Amen. All right. So first I want to start, before we get into your questions and the formula, secret formula for personal finance podcast success, I would like to prove to you that we have made it. Like if you were questioning like, oh, who are you guys to be like talking about this stuff? I just want to say, when you Google personal finance podcast, we're not in the 9 podcasts that show up on the first page, but when you click 42 more, we are there.
Wow.
Try it. Try it. So we are in the top 51. We are in the top 51.
Amazing.
Yes, at least. And we're somewhere in the middle of the pack. So it's like probably top 30 or something.
Are you just guessing?
I am guessing. I didn't count. But I'm adding 9 to 42. We are there. And we are actually on one of the journalist curated lists on the first page because everyone has like best personal finance podcasts. Everyone's got one of those.
Right.
And we're on one of those lists. It is because I know the journalist who wrote it. It is because she is a friend of mine.
I mean, networking. It's how you do. There's your
first tip.
First or third tip. I mean, we're deep in the weeds now.
And I've lost count.
Yeah.
I've lost count of the tips.
Tip is just networking. That's how we keep
friends.
Moving along in life.
Making
friends.
I like to call it making friends.
Knowing
I hate being
and
networked,
being known.
but I love being made friend with.
Community.
Yes.
We need it.
Yes. So that is all of the clout and justification of status that we bring to this very important discussion on how to start a personal finance podcast.
Oh, is that the direction we're going? How to?
It's a little tongue in cheek, but that is the theme. It's a loose theme. All right. So I did not assign these questions to anyone because we'll probably both want to answer each of them in our own way. So the first one that you guys wanted to know is, how did you start the podcast? How did it come to be? And if you've listened to other people's podcasts that we've been on, you've probably heard the story. Mm-hmm. But we don't get the chance to share it a lot on this one.
There's always, I think we try and answer this question like an elevator speech. We will often give a very short answer, although I've seen multiple layers to it. I think what I will choose to say to this question is we were friends, and that story of how we met is in multiple other podcasts. And maybe you'll touch on it, Jen, but it really, from my perspective, was Eric, my husband, wanting to get into the podcasting space. He had been a producer, music producer, mostly as a hobby, but made some money at it and was trying to get out of the work that he was doing. So he was like the original, how do I bootstrap my way to finding other work that I'm going to enjoy more? And what do I think that's going to be? And let me just give it a try. And so he saw podcasting as potentially the bread and butter of audio work. It's not music, but it's better than electrical work. So he was kind of looking around for, how could I start a podcast from the ground up? That would be his kind of baby and part of his portfolio so that he could see if he likes it and then have something to show people if he is going to help other people start a podcast. And so I think he saw it in you and I first. He had asked you, do you ever think about starting a podcast? And you, of course, were like, no, never. And I've come to learn that no, never means absolutely very soon.
Absolutely. Very soon. Yeah. A no, never from me is unfortunately probably in the next couple weeks.
Yeah. So let me give it a try. And I was mostly on board just because I liked you, Jen, and I wanted to help my husband. And this also, that was the idea, was let's do personal finance. Eric was like, oh yeah, Jill enjoys not spending a lot of money and she knows how to get things inexpensively. We've come to learn that frugality is about so much more than that, as I'm sure we'll talk about. And you've probably seen my evolution if you've been with us for a long time. And so that was my reason for getting into it. And also, I think I realized, this is an opportunity for me to learn more about a subject that I wouldn't necessarily choose to be talking about all the time. This podcast has forced me to read, now 600 articles on personal finance and be involved in a community where others are talking and asking questions. And you, Jen, are informing me with the kind of research background that you have. And it is true. Like all of those things have happened and I've been quite amazed. But for me, the how did we, it was these conversations and considering what could this be and how could it be a win-win-win-win-win for all of us. We each entered it and we still do, I think, see you, Jen, myself, and Eric as kind of the trio who started this podcast. Eric, thankfully, has had less and less to do with it as we've been able to flap our wings. Thankfully for him.
Less and less.
But still very much a part of it and the inception of it. And so, but yet the three of us came at it with very different reasons. For Eric, it was trying his hand at the background and the audio and the back end of it. For you, it was to grow your personal blog brand. And for me, it was to be a support and to learn more. But, it worked for all of us. Holy smokes, it worked for all of us.
In ways we did not anticipate. It was really an outlet for me because I have seen myself as a writer, not a podcaster. I did not need to add something else to my plate. I didn't have a child at that time, much less two children. So it was something I went in and I was like, we can do this for a little while. And if it doesn't work out, we don't have to do it forever.
Yeah.
So we didn't go in with this all or nothing mentality. We really all went in with it let's try our hand at this.
Yeah.
Let's explore it and not be afraid of the new thing, which is at first kind of what my hesitation. And I think that's probably the first lesson in all of this is that we so often in our finances, in our career, in life, want to be all or nothing. If I can't do it the best, then I shouldn't do it at all. But I think the feeling of just being curious really is how Frugal Friends came to be. Yeah. Eric was curious about if podcasting could be, the next phase for audio engineering. And you were curious about personal finance. I was curious about podcasting. So I really encourage people to go in and not say this is my new way of life. This is what I'm banking everything on, because this is not what I banked everything on. This was never the plan to be a full-time podcaster.
Yeah.
But it happened that way as a result of being curious.
Well, and for me, if I can tack on a lesson to that, I think being willing to go outside of what your norms might be, what you would think you'd want to do. If someone would have asked me pre-Frugal Friends, what would you want to have a podcast on? It 100% would not have been personal finance, because I didn't view myself as having much to say in this space. And I don't really, other than representing the voice of the common person and having some of my own lived experience. But I certainly would have gone the route of counseling or digging into people's stories. That's what appeals to me. But this wasn't, and I'm never going to advocate that people do something that they really don't like to do. But I think sometimes we don't know what those things are until we give it a try. And I'm so grateful. And it's one of the reasons why when we talk about side hustles, I encourage people to pick up a side hustle. that is something they really enjoy and or outside of what they do in their 9 to 5. Mm-hmm. Pretty much I say that because that's a part of my lived experience that now looking back, I'm so glad I didn't choose something social work adjacent, because that just would have been then all of my time is talking about the issues and the injustices and the deep hurts and sufferings of people. And that's too much for one person 24/7. Mm-hmm. This provides me such a separate space to still be myself. It's still things I'm interested in, but it's totally different. They're connected. There's many overlaps, which I'm grateful for. But I think when we're considering a new career or a side hustle or just something else to set our hands to feed us, to give us some additional life or benefit, because we didn't approach this necessarily as a side hustle. We just approached this as let's give this a try. But it was able to turn into that. But even as a hobby, like what's something that you can do that might even be exercising a different part of you? Yeah.
And that you don't have to be a complete expert. All you need to be is 10 steps ahead of whoever your target audience is and make that clear. So and also, it's not just us. I want to highlight that too. I know we're only on the first question, but I think we can look at people on Instagram or podcasts or literally pick any other field, but especially business owners, and think they're doing it all themselves. And 100% like, no, we're not. And it has gone better, I think, for you and I to have one another. And we have a virtual assistant, shout out Goldie, and we have an editor, and we have Eric, who really, we couldn't have, nor would we have started a podcast if it hadn't have been for his knowledge from the start. Yeah. Shout out to our editor, Christian. Shout out to our social media manager, Paula. Like we have people, our video editor, Maddie. We have people.
We didn't start there. We started with you, me, and Eric, which is great. But even that, we weren't alone.
Right.
And I think that made all the difference.
Exactly. Okay. So moving on to the second one. The second ones are a little probably less meaty than...
Okay, you answer it first.
Okay. You have to ask it.
Okay. How have you changed as a person as the podcast has progressed, and how has that shown up in the show?
We both have changed a lot as people, and our views on personal finance and frugality have evolved. I won't say they've changed. I would say they've evolved, as they should.
Yeah.
I think it is unwise to set your opinions in stone, even when it pertains to yourself. Like, you could have all the knowledge about yourself and say, this is the best way for me. But in reality, what's best for you is best for you right now. And that can always evolve. And it probably should be. When we started this podcast, I did not have kids. And now I have, we're recording this in February. When it airs, I'll hopefully have 2. We have 1 right now. So like, a lot has changed, but it's also my views on frugality have refined. They've been refined. And so I think when we started, I was much more focused on like, I want to help people save money so they can pay off debt faster. Now I do this podcast because I want to help people feel good about their money and be able to not feel guilt and shame about what they're spending money on. And that obviously will involve, it has the peripheral stuff of like, you feel better about your money when you have less debt, and you feel less guilt and shame about your spending when you are spending probably less than what you're making. And so that has become the core. So what the peripherals were my priority when we started, and now I've put the peripherals in their place and created a more solid core belief.
Wow.
That's me.
Okay. That's amazing. I don't even know if I could say all the ways that I have changed or evolved over the last 5 years, but for what I can see, I certainly think, first of all, life circumstances have changed through the course of recording this podcast. Eric and I have become debt free and we bought a house. Like, we stopped living in vehicles and we're in a home now in Florida. We moved states. So there's so many
not living in a vehicle.
Yes, right. There's so many things that I can point to that just life has happened and we've continued to record the podcast. I think one of the biggest changes or evolutions for me has been mindset around money. And this community of Frugal Friends podcast listeners and you, Jen, I can pretty much say you're 90% responsible for that, which I'm so grateful for. I don't think I realized the benefit that I would receive to the extent that I have in this time. And I think people who have listened to the show long term have probably experienced that evolution where I might have had some more traditional views about frugality in the past and a scarcity mindset. And that has shifted. And I have fully embraced this more values-based spending while not letting go of the things and habits and behaviors that have benefited me, but letting go of the behaviors, mindsets that have not been good for me. And I think you hear that in the show and the way that I talk. One other thing I think I've realized, and you helped me with this, Jen, is I partitioned myself a lot. I thought that I needed to be social worker Jill during the day and fun podcasting Jill in the night or whenever we
Jillian during the day and Jill at night.
It even comes down to I go by Jillian in the professional social work world that I'm in, and Jill on
now
the
you're
podcast.
getting the real secrets.
Now this is the silly. We're not even to the lightning round. I really felt as though these two things needed to be separate. And I still fight that sometimes because it's probably a vulnerability thing. I want to be able to say, oh yeah, that's just one part of me, that podcast. So if you listen to that, that's not really the full picture of me. And now that we're 5 years in, I'm like, yeah, people probably know me pretty well. This is probably just, but I think I felt more and more permission to also be blending my mental health background, some of the perspective that I have from my day job into the podcast. And you really you're like, why do you feel like you need to not say that? And I think I felt as though I needed to play the role of the person who doesn't know that much about personal finance so that like the listener who also might feel dumb sometimes asking questions can feel seen and take away the shame. But then realizing, okay, there are some things that I do know and I can talk about that and that could benefit people. And it can help me feel like a more congruent person showing up on the podcast. That might be a little bit more meta of an answer, but that's been a shift. And I think I've felt more freedom and permission to incorporate my whole self on the podcast.
Sometimes it can be uncomfortable shifting your identity when you grow into something and you've been something else for so long, or and not even that it's been publicly labeled, but you personally labeled yourself as something. Yeah. And to give yourself the freedom to be who you are now in this season.
Yeah,
is definitely uncomfortable. It's part of that like hard work of self-discovery. When we talk about like finding your core values, that's hard work and that's ongoing work because of stuff like this. Sometimes in a season, you do adopt a label for better or for worse. There was definitely a lot of benefits in those early episodes to you asking the questions that I wouldn't have thought to ask or didn't remember that I had those questions. And now there's so much more benefit to you being like knowing more of the questions to ask that other people, would not. So yeah, I guess there's your second tip is to embrace.
We have no idea what number we're on.
We are, fifth. I don't know. Just take them as they come.
It's anyone's guess.
Take them as they come.
Yes.
All right. So this one kind of plays on the last one. Is there any advice you've given on the show in the past that you would now change and say differently? It is, I'm sure. There absolutely is.
I don't go back and listen. That's
right.
The thing.
So here's the thing. Audio is so different from blog because you can go in and update a blog every day and change the words. But when you're posting podcasts or YouTube videos, and video is actually the worst because YouTube does not allow you to re-upload. Even in like podcasting, if you say something you regret, you can go back in and either cut that part out or re-upload audio. YouTube now gives you the opportunity to cut little pieces out, but it's very hard to update when your views have updated.
Yeah.
So if we've ever said anything on the show that has offended you, sorry.
Sometimes it happens.
Yeah.
I would just say anything that might have played into scarcity mindset. I think from the beginning, we were saying we were pushing against that, but I gotta imagine that there might have been maybe even episodes that were just more focused on skimping and scraping over more of looking for alternatives, you know, just to skimp for the sake of skimping. But that more the theme of that, I think we've evolved from.
I would say, we always were against that, but I think we have evolved. Sometimes you know what you're against, but you don't know what you're for.
Yeah.
And now we know what we are for. So we are against the procrastinating. So like doing things to feel like you're making progress, but aren't really making progress, like the couponing and the rebate apps and the nickel and diming type of saving versus gaining control, self-control over your discretionary spending and gaining control over impulse spending and subscriptions and the mindless spending that we all do. That is what we are for, is gaining control over that. And we're against making little actions that make you feel like you might be doing something but aren't really doing much.
I guess I would say don't buy a car on Craigslist. That has changed in the last 5 years. There might have been a time 5 years ago when we might have said, you could check Craigslist for a used car. Yeah. And now I would say, no, don't do that.
Yeah. I think I was much more for buy nothing groups at the beginning of the podcast. It was obsessed. Now I'm not on Facebook much anymore. And I can see like the temptation to just take everything, even things you don't need. So I'm much more, also I just don't have time. I do not have time to babysit
on it.
Buy nothing groups.
We still love them.
Yeah.
Just what our focus is has changed. And that has to do with debt payoff and other things. Yeah. A lot has shifted.
Yes.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So, buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So, how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing. And of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/strategic. That's oracle.com/strategic. oracle.com/strategic.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson.
You might be asking yourself, what is sibling revelry?
Yeah, well, we just made it up.
They'll have some laughs and maybe inspire some people along the way with universal tales of what it's like to grow up with brothers and sisters.
We're full-blood siblings, the only full-blood sibling.
In our family. Well, not in the world. I mean...
No, in the whole world. That's just it. Like, no one...
Dive into family tales and explore the human mind with guests like Joel and Benji Madden.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up, to really like all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
It's more than a podcast. It's a celebration of the ties that bind us. Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, Jen, biggest surprise of podcasting.
I'm going to go deep on this one.
Whew, okay, I'm ready for it.
So when I've always been like a super independent person. I am an only child. I moved out when I was 16, moved 2 hours away for college. I've always kind of raised myself. And when I started my business, I did it on my own with the intention of having a solopreneur kind of business.
Yeah.
When we started the podcast and we started it as a co-hosting thing, at first I was I don't trust this person to not ghost me. And
this person being me,
yeah.
Jill.
Yeah.
Jillian by day, Jill by night.
I don't trust Jillian she's not even really interested in personal finance. What are we doing? Mm-hmm. So it was a leap of faith. And the biggest surprise of this last 5 years is how much better everything I do is with you, Jill. It is, I am capable on my own. Mm-hmm. I can get by. I can do good work. People praise me on it. But whatever I do in the podcast with you, it takes off. It's so good. Mm-hmm. It undeniably good. Mm-hmm. And that was the most surprising thing for me, was that it's kind of like that phrase, you can go fast alone, but further together.
I was trying to think about that this morning. I was like, what is that saying?
That has proven to be I can't, it's so true. Yeah. It's not just a saying. And so now, and it's also a huge burden lifted too, because emotionally to do everything by yourself is pretty heavy. But knowing that I can place some of the burden on you, which I wouldn't have given myself permission to do before, because I felt like I had to carry the weight of a full business. Knowing that that's not only acceptable, but it's better. It makes things better. That has been the biggest surprise.
You said it before, but it still just gets me in my heart. And I love you so much. You're such a good friend and business partner. I think similarly, there's a lot of shockers for me. I think one of the biggest is that we're still doing it.
I know, right? That's a second surprise.
So surprising.
Yeah.
From what I would have thought. I'm not surprised now, from a week ago. Yes, this makes sense. But looking back 5 years ago, if you would have said you're still going to be doing it.
Oh, wow.
That's gnarly to me. So, but I think that then is the testament to what you're describing, only now I'll say it from my perspective, is how enjoyable this is. People will ask me, mostly friends, how long do you think you guys can keep going? Are you still, how's the podcast going? You still enjoy it? How do you come up with content? That's a big one. Everyone wants to know how we come up with content. And I just say, Jen does that. Don't look at me. I just get on the mic. But my continual answer, and it is true to this day, it has never felt like an obligation. I say, it's just a reason to talk with a friend. And I said, you have become one of my greatest friends simply because we've got something uniting us that we get to talk about that often leads to even more vulnerable conversation off the mic, and learning together and encouraging one another and seeing how we truly benefit each other. That likewise for you, Jen, there are things that I now know, decisions I've made for my life. I mean, we moved down here. We moved to Florida from Philadelphia. And I can't say that was just because of you, Jen. I don't want to put that pressure on you, but this business, this podcast, you is a big reason for that. It was definitely on the, if you were to have Googled Jill's top reasons for moving to Florida, you definitely would have been in the like C42 more.
Yes, I know I've made it.
Yeah, I think that's surprising how much I have enjoyed it and continue to enjoy it, how much it's not an obligation, how much I've gained from it. And this friendship that people have listened to us build our friendship.
Yes, you have. If you've been with us from the beginning, you've literally heard us become better friends. Like when we started the show, we were friends, but we were like couple friends. Like we would never hang out, just the two of us.
Well, because I lived in a different state.
Yeah,
we started the podcast. Until 2 years ago, this podcast was always remote.
Yeah,
Jen and I just Zoom in each other from other states.
Yeah, but we wouldn't even like text each other. No. It was always like a group text, the four of us, and the four of us would always hang out. And you have as you've listened to the show, have listened to Jill and I like become really, really close friends.
And now I am the person who's throwing your baby shower. Like, if you want to know how close of friends Jen and I are, like,
she asked to throw it.
Yeah, I did. I volunteered.
I wasn't going to have one. And she said, that's unacceptable. So, that was refreshing. I love that. Okay. Next one.
We don't have too many more.
Yeah, it's just two more. Tell us about a time y'all laughed so hard you couldn't stop.
Do you have one?
No. Well, I think we would never, the type of laughing I'm thinking we would never do on the show because that's annoying to hear.
Right.
Like we laugh, but it's like a second and then Christian's like, okay, bye. You would never hear us the way we belly laugh together. We wouldn't subject you to that on the show.
No. But there's been so many times. I can't think of a specific thing that I could tell you, here's what made me laugh so hard, but I will describe to you that Jen does this thing where she drops gold out of her mouth using words. The gold are the words that she says. She's so quick-witted, and then pairs that with stone face. You've got this face where you drop gold and it's just blank, and it gets me so hard. If ever I am laughing and there have been times on the podcast where I have to pull away from the mic. You keep talking, or it's like when we're interviewing someone and I pull away and I'm gone and Jen just has to keep going with the show. That's an example of what gets me. Again, who knows what she might have said, but it's mostly the delivery, the quick wit that just like shocks me. And then the stone face. It's a great combo. This is why I think we have to do video, because people need to experience it.
Yeah, I think it's my spiritual gift. But I can't tell you where it comes from. I just think of them.
Yeah.
And I say them. And sometimes like you appreciate them, but not every crowd appreciates them.
Right.
But I say them anyway.
And that's mostly what also gets me is oftentimes it's something that is relatively inaudible. So then that's what makes it really funny too, because no one else heard it. No one else is watching, and you're just there.
I don't do it for other people. I do it for me.
Yes. And I just get to catch it.
Yes.
Oh.
I think we laugh like we'll wrap up an episode And sometimes we'll just start belly laughing from something that we did, said on the after show, or something like we held it in for too long, like for earlier in the episode. And sometimes it does take us a while to get started to record an episode because we are talking and laughing.
One of the recent episodes was funny. What was the monkey in the bed? We kept laughing really hard after that one, whichever after show that one is.
After we wrapped, then we continued to laugh about Jill mixing up 5 monkeys on the bed and the monkeys rolling off the bed.
I'll give you one more example of something Jen did, because otherwise this might just be sounding like a maid of honor speech where no one else gets it. But we had it was our 4-year, 2 million downloads deal with iHeart party at my house last April. And Jen was not pregnant at the time. And we had just a few mixed drinks that were based off of the names of different parts of the podcast episodes. And we had a photo wall with fake money. And Jen at one point thought everyone else was on the same page with her and just got down on the ground and did snow angels in the money, thinking others were going to join her, and no one else did. And that made me laugh really hard.
Jill,
too,
see where you're wrong on that one is that I didn't think other people were going to join me. I didn't care that I knew everyone else was not on my level.
Yeah.
And I did it anyway.
Yeah.
And so that is the only caveat I have to your story. That I did imbibe in several drinks and then made snow angels in the fake money. So, but who wouldn't?
Yeah.
Who wouldn't,
Okay, next question. Jen, what podcasts do you listen to?
Ooh, I love a good cult podcast. You know me, very into cults. I think I always say what audiobooks I'm listening to when we do our book club episode, but for podcasts right now, Smokescreen. So they have 5 different seasons out, and every season is a different crime. I am always into Wait, Don't Tell Me. Bill Curtis, hit me up. Give me a bill of the week. And I'm not listening to a lot of personal finance podcasts right now, but I feel like this would be the time to name some of my favorite people who have personal finance podcasts. So we've got Allison Baggerly, Inspired Budget podcast. I think she is one of the best interviewees you can get on your show, and she is an equally good interviewer. She's a fantastic person. I love her, and she's been so supportive of us over the years. And she is also one of my close friends. Andy Hill, Marriage, Kids, and Money. He is also a fantastic person. I'm really basing these on the character of the hosts because I feel like that's most important. I don't care if they have a good podcast. If the host isn't a good person, I won't talk about the podcast. I already talked about Optimal Finance Daily. Diana narrates that one. Let's see. Who else? Who am I forgetting? Oh, Rich Jones, the Mental Wealth Show. Rich, a fantastic, phenomenal person. Stacking Benjamins, Joe Salsihai, one of our mentors, fantastic human being.
You could just binge our guest list and listen to any of their podcasts.
Yes.
We only have dimes on this show.
Absolutely. We do not bring people onto the show or share our platform with people who we don't think exemplify a rising tide lifts all boats mentality in their personal life. The professional life is the last thing. Then what they're saying in their business is the last thing we look at. The first thing we look at is who they are as people.
Yeah.
So I'll just say that. At least, but it may come out later that they were not good people, but we didn't know that when we hung out. We didn't know that at the time. So
you decide.
Yeah.
You decide.
Yeah. Don't go too far back in the archives.
Okay. So for me, and here's another salacious bit. is that I am not really a podcast listener. And I realize that is maybe an offensive thing to say in and of itself, because we've got podcast listeners who listen to our podcast. And I don't really listen to that many podcasts.
Yeah,
I listen to music, but
sometimes you shouldn't do what you do because then you like imitate it too much.
Okay.
Maybe that.
The podcasts that I listen to are very separate. So I take that tip across the board to do things separate from what you do. I really don't hardly ever listen to personal finance podcasts unless I'm being interviewed or we're interviewing someone on the show. I do like to listen to a couple so I can kind of get the flavor and be helpful. I want to be helpful. But during the renovation process, we listened to a lot of Smartless, which is that Will Arnett, Jason Bateman.
I've heard that's really good.
Oh gosh, who's
there's
the
not
third
enough
guy?
like
Sean Hayes.
There's not enough like group murder or
that one's just a fun one because sometimes when I'm just in the throes of painting, caulking, wood filling, sanding, there's only so much music that can get you through. And it's just a fun one. It's funny. I will say once I got about 10 episodes in, I realized it's just a lot of rich celebrities talking about rich celebrity life. But it's fun.
Yeah.
And then the other one that I will listen to is The Place We Find Ourselves, which is put out by Adam Young. He, not a massive podcast, but really, really great, much more the mental health field and helping people to dissect really the place we find ourselves, the place you find ourselves. Where have you come from? Where are you going? So more mental health world.
I'll also say the Imperative Entertainment Network, their true crime podcasts have been getting me through. See, like I listen to cult and true crime. That's what I listen to.
Yeah.
I also don't listen to personal finance podcasts. So I think that as an aid to us, because then we don't know what we're doing is wrong or right. We just do it.
We just do what we want to do.
It's always been in our strength. And that's our 18th tip to you is to don't be so obsessed with recreating other people's success. Just find your own.
Oh, do you know what I'm obsessed with recreating every week? And I love listening to. I will listen to this all day.
And you can steal this from us.
The Bill of the Week.
Right. It's time for the best minute of your entire week. Maybe a baby was born and his name is William. Maybe you paid off your mortgage. Maybe your car died and you're happy to not have to pay that bill anymore. Duck bills, Buffalo Bills, Bill Clinton. This is the Bill of the Week.
Hey, Jen and Jill, it's Lisa from Georgia. I just finished your Hygge episode and want to say thank you so much. My Bill of the Week is my birthday Disney cruise. I've saved up for what feels like years and was finally done saving 5 months ahead of schedule. But I'm experiencing guilt about all the practical things I should really be using my saved up money for instead. At the end of the Hygge episode, you addressed my concern, and now I'm even more excited to go relax on my birthday cruise. So thank you so much. I'm so glad to be done with this magical Bill of the Week.
It's magic! It's magical!
Oh, it's magic, you know.
Okay.
That's all I can say.
Lisa, it is my dream to take a Disney cruise. I am so happy for you. I'm so excited for you. And I'm so pleased that we've gotten a lot of emails and messages about the Hygge episode. Yeah. It has been a very highly downloaded episode. And so I'm so glad so many people are getting like essentially the gist is to like embrace the season that you're in. Don't fight against it. Like, and that can come with saving, like how we can feel, you can save for something and then feel guilt about spending what you've saved for because of the quote unquote practical things you should be doing with your money. But no, Embrace the season.
Yeah. You're not impulsively spending that. You have identified this is something that I can do and afford and not go into debt for. And what a beautiful way to celebrate your birthday and how magical, like you've said.
Oh, you're going to have so much. I mean, you've probably already been on it when you hear this. Oh my gosh. I love watching my Disney vloggers and Instagrammers.
That's something I've not looked into too much. That would be really fun. I'd love to hear how that went.
Oh my gosh. Yes. People go like as adults without kids or with kids. It's like the best. And I can't wait to go on a Disney cruise one day. I can't wait.
You've inspired us, Lisa.
Lisa, I'm so happy for
you.
you.
And that's why we do this.
Yeah. It's
to highlight you and inspire us. Well done, Lisa. If you all listening have a bill that you want to submit, if it's about an inspirational thing you gleaned from an episode that really gave you the permission to do with your money what you've intended to do with it, or again, you are Bill. You don't have to be more than a bill to call us. frugalfriendspodcast.com/bill. Leave us your bill.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson.
You might be asking yourself, what is sibling revelry?
Yeah, well, we just made it up.
They'll have some laughs and maybe inspire some people along the way with universal tales of what it's like to grow up with brothers and sisters.
We're full-blood siblings, the only full-blood sibling.
In our family. Well, not in the world. I mean...
No, in the whole world. That's just it. Like, no one...
Dive into family tales and explore the human mind with guests like Joel and Benji Madden.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up, to really like all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
It's more than a podcast. It's a celebration of the ties that bind us. Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
From the studio who brought you the #1 podcast, The Piketon Massacre, this is Murder 101.
A group of high school students started a project to research a string of unsolved murders.
Those murders happened in the mid-1980s.
He's out there doing stuff. He just didn't stop.
Everything that the students predicted through their profile turned out to be accurate.
Redhead killer profile. Male, Caucasian, 5'9" to 6'2", 180 to 270 pounds. Unstable home, absent father and a domineering mother. Right-handed, IQ above 100, most likely heterosexual.
There is no profile of this killer except for the ones the students created.
Just because some of these women no longer have people to speak for them does not mean that they deserve to not be spoken for.
What if this guy's still alive? Like, what if he comes after us?
I said, are you going to kill me? And he said, yes.
Listen to Murder 101 on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And now it's time for the lightning round.
All right. Last question. If you could
Does this one come from Goldie?
Yes, this one is from Goldie.
Yay, Goldie.
If you could go back when you were first starting out as Frugal Friends, what would you do differently?
Move to Florida sooner. Just straight away.
I will never forget when I first met you and you were living in that
vehicle.
RV. Yes, that vehicle. And we were hanging out at the KOA and you were like, oh, I'm going to start my master's, but Florida's the only state I can't move to.
Yes.
You did say that.
And
I was like, well, that's dumb. You should forget your life plans and move here instead.
And look at me now. I figured out a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's a bill, there's a way.
There's a bill, there's a way.
And I got my master's in Pennsylvania, but didn't get my license till I moved down here. That's where there's not reciprocity.
There you go.
So I was able to get my licensure in Florida, and it does actually set me up better to be able to move to any other state, but never will I, Jen. I'm here and I'm here for good.
I believe you.
That's something that I would say just for me personally. I wish that I would have moved to Florida sooner. I don't know like what was holding me back, but I think also for Frugal Friends. And I do think that whether consciously or subconsciously, it's one of the things that shifted us moving here, I think, shifted both of our mindsets to, okay, this is the real deal. Let's see what we can make of this. Versus we did it. We did it for 3 years in different states. But I don't think until we were next to each other, literally 10, 15 minutes down the road from one another, that it's like, this could really work for both of us to give this even more of our time, energy, and effort. And I'm so glad that we did it.
Well, when you wintered in my backyard, in your trailer, I think is when we got a taste of like what it could be like.
Yeah.
If you were here.
We started the pandemic together.
We did. And it was fantastic. We went to Disney together the week before it shut down. I mean,
we didn't know.
We didn't. So I would agree with you. That should be your answer.
What about for you, Jen?
So for me, I think I would have embraced it, like see it for what it was, what it is sooner. I knew, like, I was doing okay with Modern Frugality, which was like my business that was just me. It's still my Instagram handle because Jen Smith is taken.
You should still follow her. She does post some really funny stuff.
Sometimes. So I was holding on to that. I was making do. I was slowly building, but it all felt like I was pushing through to be successful. And everything with the podcast, we weren't trying at all. And it was just like taking off.
Yeah.
But it took me a while to get to the place where I would go all in on the podcast because I had this scarcity mindset. I was like, I can barely live on, what I'm making now, which is silly because like we've always lived on one income, which is Travis's, but I felt guilty. I do feel guilty when I don't contribute to the family finances. And that's an internal thing for me, because that's not required of me. So I was like, I don't think I can afford to just like take a 50% pay cut on a podcast that's making $3 an hour. And so
I don't even think I was making that at the time.
Like we were just growing so fast, but we were having trouble monetizing because we weren't putting in effort, or we didn't have time to put in. When I was just like, you know what? I need to simplify. I had a slight mental breakdown, very slight, and realized I needed to pick one. I needed to pick one of something. Like I was doing Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, podcast, blog. Like I literally did everything.
Yeah.
And I needed to pick one thing.
Oh.
And that
Your
was where
favorite tip.
And I was saying it then, and I wasn't following it. And when I picked one thing, not only did I have the energy to monetize the show grew faster, and we were able to see the opportunity with iHeart that I would not have been looking for, thinking about, had I not been all in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. If nothing else, I think what we are aiming at and encouraging others towards is exactly what we're saying throughout this whole episode of focusing on one thing, finding freedom and permission, being curious, getting community around you to support in whatever it is that you're aimed at. I think all of this is woven through what we've just said, what we've learned, what we've implemented, what we've grown in, and what we would say to others is a really decent aim, even if your exact journey or story doesn't look like ours. These are the tenets that are so helpful on this personal and finance journey.
Yes. And those are our 42 tips for starting a podcast. So if you need a breakdown of those, transcribe the episode. I don't know what to tell you. They're in there. All 42 are in there.
They're embedded in there. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We know you're a true fan if you queued this one up. You're not just coming at this only for the tips. You were coming at this just to learn more behind the scenes. And we're so glad you're here. If you want to know more about more behind the scenes stuff and other community things, we've got that membership we've been talking about. Other fellow Frugal Friend listeners are already in there, paying off debt, getting at other financial goals. We've got monthly money challenges, accountability groups. Again, that community piece that is so important. And we want to congratulate one of our members for a big win. This comes from Andrea, who shares, within the first 24 hours of joining, literally, I found 2 websites suggested in here that I'd never heard of to sell clothes, Poshmark and Swap. I live in Australia, so I had to find more local versions. So both of those versions do exist in Australia. I had a box of clothes I knew I wanted to try and sell and another couple of boxes in the trunk to take to my local op shop. Looking up what brands these websites sold, I dragged the boxes back into the house and took out specific brands and have an even bigger pile to sell. My plan with the money I make, put it towards my emergency fund. Smiley face. The websites / apps are also so much better than Facebook Marketplace. I hate Facebook, which was one of the deciding factors in me joining this club. Amazing,
Congrats.
Andrea. We're so glad that just after popping into the membership in the first 24 hours, you found tips from other community members. And that's the beauty of it. It's not just Jen and I in there. It's the other community members who are sharing, who are like real about their goals and debt payoff and sharing wins. And there's just so much motivation and more.
Yeah. If you thought there's too much of us in this episode, check out the Frugal Friends Club, because that's where all the listeners who are getting the helpful tips and giving the helpful tips are hanging out. And they're like, whatever, Jen and Jill, thanks for bringing us together, but we don't need you anymore. That's just kidding, but we are in there.
Yes. But truly, thanks for also listening. If you want to check out this membership where we've got the courses and the interviews and the challenges, and then just like other Frugal Friends listeners, head to frugalfriendspodcast.com/club. Get it.
Check it.
See you next time.
Frugal Friends is produced by Eric Sirianni.
I remembered something that actually made us both belly laugh the very first time we engaged with it. And since then, can still elicit quite a laugh. And it's a meme that we should probably get into our show notes.
Yes, I know.
Guy
Yes, I know.
who's looking at a vehicle.
Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. Explain it with words.
Okay. So there's 2 people. One of them's checking out a car and one of them is a car salesman. And the guy who's checking out the car says, cargo space? And the salesman question mark, like is there cargo space? Like cargo space? And the salesman says, car no go space.
Car no go there. Cargo road.
Cargo road. And maybe it still sounds like we are delivering a maid of honor speech with a joke that no one really finds that funny. But I kid you not, we laid eyes on that beauty and we could not stop.
I still can't stop laughing.
It still gets me.
I still say it all the time. Whenever I see a car, and when we were shopping for cars, it was uncontrollable. And it was so annoying to whoever was not Travis and me. Oh my gosh.
Car no go space. Cargo road.
Cargo space? Cargo road.
We'll get you the meme. I mean, we've described it flawlessly.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a great meme.
You should have it. Yeah, you should.
Oh, okay.
Discover the heartwarming and hilarious world of sibling connections on Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson. Dive into family tales, explore the human mind, and laugh with guests like Joel and Benji Madden. It's more than a podcast. It's a celebration of the ties that bind us.
And it's fun because we've decided to open it up to really like all kinds of different siblings. And it's going to be an awesome season.
Listen to Sibling Revelry with Kate Hudson and Oliver Hudson on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Jacob Goldstein. I used to host Planet Money. Now I'm starting a new show. It's called What's Your Problem? Every week on What's Your Problem, entrepreneurs and engineers describe the future they're going to build once they solve a few problems. I'm talking to people trying to figure out how to do things that no one on the planet knows how to do, from creating a drone delivery business to building a car that can truly drive itself. Listen to What's Your Problem on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.